Good morning, good morning. Love that song. Great walkout music. Was kind of tempted to dance, and then after the opening act, thought maybe not a great idea. How about another round of applause? What a wonderful act. Great way to kick things off. So thank you so much for being here. Our 10th annual Talent Connect. Can you believe that? 10 Talent Connects, yeah. So I remember the very first one, almost like it was yesterday, downtown San Francisco. We've got over 4,600 people in attendance today. Back then it was roughly 200 of you. And I understand from our team that a handful of you have been here throughout. You were at our first and you're also here. Could I ask you, if you were at our very first Talent Connect, could you please stand up? Could you stand? There's a few folks, Incredible. Wow, way more than I was anticipating. We may have hit double digits there. And thank you so much for being part of the journey with us. And that's actually apropos of our theme at Talent Connect this year, which is Better Together. And when we talk about Better Together at Talent Connect, we're really talking about bringing that to life in three ways. First is people, that's you. Bringing you back to this event. We know how much you value the opportunity to connect and reconnect with some of the best in the talent industry, to share best practices, to forge new connections. And for the first time ever at Talent Connect, it's not just about connecting you with one another, it's also about connecting you with the community in which we're having Talent Connect. So here in Dallas, I know yesterday, many of you helped put together over 2,000 hygiene kits for recent flood victims. Today there's going to be some mentorship of youth in the Dallas community. So big round of applause to yourselves for getting involved. I think it's fantastic. It's wonderful. Well, when we talk about Better Together, it's not just the people. We're also talking about our products and the way our products are better together, Talent Solutions, Learning Solutions, and Glint. And while I won't be getting into that specifically during my keynote, you're going to be hearing a lot about the way these products are creating value for all of you over the next couple of days. And then lastly is the way we can work better together to help accelerate the realization of our purpose at LinkedIn, our vision to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And that's where I'm going to be focused during today's keynote. So to start, let's talk about our progress in terms of making this vision a reality. And at LinkedIn, that begins with the people that we serve, our members, 645 million of them. That's up roughly 70 million from this time last year when we all got together, still growing at over 2 members per second, believe it or not, and that's been the case for a long time now. It's starting to go beyond our core audience, the core knowledge worker, the white-collar professional. And we touched on this during last year's Talent Connect, the importance of going beyond professionals, frontline workers, hourly workers, and a growing constituency for many of you, so important in terms of your workforce strategies. We're now 80 million strong with regard to that segment, and interestingly enough, their engagement growth on LinkedIn is 3 times higher than our core audience. That's a result of providing the right custom content that targets that segment, standardizing the right data. And then last data point worth calling out here, over half of all the jobs, we have roughly 22 million available jobs on LinkedIn. Over half of those are now relevant to this very important segment for us. Turning from members to overall engagement for FY19, pretty big numbers, 30 billion member sessions. Those are visits to our site. That was up 27% year over year. And this is a really important way in which we can connect to our membership and help all of you find the right prospects, the more engaged our members become. A lot of different reasons for this growth. Wanted to call out a few of them, go a little deeper on some of those, starting with our feed. I hear from many of you that you're using LinkedIn more than ever before, and the feed has become a primary source for your business news, professionally relevant information. And for us, a big driver of that is breaking news and breaking views. Content packages that we can pull together quite uniquely by virtue of our professional context, the data flowing through LinkedIn, and a world-class editorial team that's curating these packages. That same editorial team is also creating more original content than ever before on LinkedIn. Unique packages like top startups and top companies. Some of you may have recently seen a few of those. Interviews that you can't find anywhere else in the business world, only on LinkedIn. And even original podcasts. How many of you are familiar with Hello Monday? Show of hands, anyone? Oh, okay. So Hello Monday from our very own Jesse Hempel started last season, quickly rose to one of the top podcasts, not just within the business segment, but across all podcasts in iTunes, which we're very proud of. Season 2 just started. Encourage you to check that out. I just sounded like I was doing a plug on The Tonight Show or something. That was kind of funny. Definitely check it out. Jesse does an amazing job with that. And in addition to the original content, you're probably seeing more and more video in the feed. Very engaging, wonderful way for people to communicate in depth. And it's not just archived video, it's also live video. And several months ago, we launched LinkedIn Live. It's a very impactful way for influencers, journalists, publishers, and your companies to tell their stories in real time using the medium of video. And not to get too meta on you right now, but we're actually streaming this event. So you can see, oh, that's kind of cool. And can we get an audience shot? Can we get now you're on the stream. That's right. That's right. Note, if you're ever on stage in a situation like this, wonderful way to get cheap applause is to just pan immediately to the audience. Okay, bringing it back to the presentation. In addition to the investment we've been making in the feed, there's investment happening elsewhere that's also driving engagement. One area would be our brand. And our marketing and communications team has been doing fantastic work with a new campaign we launched last year around the theme of In It Together. Very consistent with the theme for Talent Connect this year of Better Together. And you can see here, according to one third party, we now rank among the 60 most valuable brands in the world, and we were one of the top 10 fastest growing brands. So we're very proud of that. We're going to continue to invest on that front. And wanted to just enable you to see some of the creatives that support this campaign and some of the success we've been having. So can we run the video?
I was having a very hard time finding my job, but I love a challenge. My brother and I, we were both born deaf. We both had that instant bond. Even when I felt like I wasn't being included, I had my brother to turn to. I've had a lot of interviews end up not in my favor because they don't think I'm capable of doing the same type of job that they do. A supervisor reached out to me on LinkedIn. We set up an interview, and from there, I was hired. LinkedIn was the matchmaker. It really showed the power of networking. Working in communication services, I can be a voice for those who want to push past their limits. I can show them that they're capable of doing anything.
So thank you. Wonderful campaign, and the second part of that campaign just launched, so stay tuned for new creatives. Another area of investment, not necessarily recent, but for the better part of the last decade, has been in the trust of our members. Without trust, LinkedIn is not what it is today as a platform. It's the bedrock of our offering, and we're a members first organization. And that means with regard to our members' data, making sure that we are as clear as possible with how we're leveraging it, as consistent as possible over time. For us, trust equals consistency over time, and try to maximize the control that our members have over how that data is leveraged. And so it's wonderful to see third-party validation of this trust. And we just heard the news yesterday that for the third year running, LinkedIn ranked the most trusted social platform. So that was wonderful to see, and I think that becomes increasingly important, thank you, especially in the era, this modern era in which we're doing business. So that's a really important one. So this rise in engagement, this increase in engagement through investments like the feed, our brand trust, and a whole host of other areas has really been a tide that lifts all the boats on LinkedIn in terms of our core businesses. And perhaps the most relevant for all of you here today is the way in which we help people find work and get jobs. And last year we were able to confirm over 4 million people were hired by virtue of leveraging LinkedIn. You can see that was up 32% year over year, and still very early days on this front. There's so much more to come. I wanted to call out just a few of the areas that have helped drive this kind of growth. Thematically, if I had to summarize one of the core areas, it would be our investment in AI, artificial intelligence, and creating more relevancy across the continuum in terms of how people are finding jobs and how you all are finding the right prospects. One example of the application of greater relevance would be matching our members with the right skills and then conversely enabling you to assess those skills. And I'm not going to get into it too much because the team has a lot of news they want to share with you on the assessments front, but suffice it to say, a recent launch is off to a very strong start there. In addition to assessing skills, we've also invested in the way in which we deliver timely notifications, now for the first time in real time. So a member that expresses the kind of work that they're interested in can be notified when a relevant job appears on the site. And this, as you might imagine, is a pretty big difference maker. And then, of course, we continue to focus on better matches for you, not just in terms of your search results, but recommending the right prospect at the right time. It goes beyond the way in which you all are recruiting the right talent. If you broaden the lens through which we think about talent solutions, we're starting to see continued scale. For example, in learning solutions, we're now up to 23 million installed learner seats. 23 million, you can see up 29%. The scale is really starting to hit critical mass there, and the team is going to bring you up to speed on a lot of exciting developments along those lines. Similarly, it was on the Talent Connect stage last year that we announced our acquisition of Glint, and we had some spontaneous applause, which felt great at the time. And it's wonderful to see the continued progress that that team has been making. 5 million employees engaged with Glint surveys last year. That was up 100% year over year. And again, very early days in terms of what's possible. Jim's going to be coming up and sharing with you some exciting developments along those lines. Coming back to this idea of better together, it's interesting to note the way in which Glint and our learning products will increasingly be integrated. By way of example, you conduct a survey and it turns out a particular manager has some areas for improvement. We can notify the manager and recommend specific courses that help that manager to learn new skills to become more effective. So that's an example of that better together theme. And then last example, LTI, LinkedIn Talent Insights, which we launched last year, has gone on to become the fastest growing SaaS business in the history of LinkedIn. And you can see over 1,300 customers in the first year alone, and the anecdotal feedback has been incredibly positive in terms of the impact it's having on how your organizations are developing their workforce strategies. When you combine the progress that we've been making in engagement, in talent solutions, learning solutions, and then beyond that suite, marketing solutions, sales solutions, premium subscriptions, all totaled, business has never been better. And for the most recent fiscal year, we did $6.8 billion of revenue, and that was up 28% year over year. For those that detected a hint of a smile on my face when I mentioned that, that would be accurate assessment. And one of the reasons for that is every time I see this number, I immediately think to when I first joined the organization over 10 years ago, and the fact that we were doing $78 million of revenue. And this has been a pretty amazing ride. And speaking, yeah. Thank you. Speaking of the theme better together, those aren't just words. We mean it, because this would not have been possible without you. Your partnership, the way in which we've worked together to help build our largest business at LinkedIn, and the progress that we've continued to make, we are deeply appreciative for all your support over the last 10 years. So give yourselves a huge round of applause. Thank you. Okay, for all this progress, for all this scale, and we're thrilled and excited, it's important to recognize that that's a means to an end. The end is that vision that we started the presentation with, to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And by far and away, the most important word in this statement is every. And underlying this idea of every member of the global workforce is a belief, a first principle, a conviction that we feel very deeply and strongly, that people with equal talent should have equal access to opportunity. And I know we are not alone in terms of how important we believe this first principle to be. In talking with many of you over the years, either in executive briefings, one-on-one summits, roundtables, This traditionally, typically, turns out to be one of the most important things we discuss, and you share your desire to help make this belief a reality. But there are challenges. There are structural obstacles and impediments. By way of example, a lot of headlines these days about socioeconomic stratification, the growing gap between high-income households and low-income households. Some would say it's at historical highs. And similarly, the widening opportunity divide, the relationship between household income and the quality of one's education, and the vicious cycle that's created there in terms of access to opportunity. There's a third structural obstacle, one that we are intimately familiar with at LinkedIn, but you don't see the same kind of headlines with regard to. But it is something we are increasingly focused on and reversing. We refer to that as the network gap. And that's where I'm going to focus the remainder of today's keynote, what it is and how we can work together to reverse that trend and close that gap. So a discussion of the network gap begins with a supposition that networks have power. Our connections, our professional relationships become incredibly valuable when it comes to doing business, getting things done, when it comes to entrepreneurs finding financing for their startups and businesses, salespeople identifying prospects, those just embarking on their career, finding the right mentor or advisor. And perhaps one that all of us have experienced, the way in which we get jobs. By way of example, a quick straw poll. Raise your hand if at any time in your career you were able to land a job by virtue of a relationship introducing you to an opportunity, making you aware of an opportunity, making a reference, making a recommendation, you name it. Because my hand is definitely, well, if you look around, this isn't entirely scientific. I think that's about 100% of folks. I didn't need an algorithm to do that. There was no hand-raising recognition technology, although that would be interesting. So anecdotally, we know the power of our networks, especially in the context of advancing our careers. We wanted to go further than this anecdotal evidence, and we asked our team, our data sciences team, to dig in, do the research, and find out exactly what kind of impact those relationships would have. And it turns out, on LinkedIn, when you are looking for a job and asking for a referral, you are 9 times more likely to get the job. 9 times more likely. That's a game changer, I think we would all agree, yes? So we want to step further. And we asked that very same team, who are the people on LinkedIn who are most likely to have the strong networks that would support that kind of opportunity? And the results weren't altogether surprising, but they are definitely worth sharing. It turns out that the neighborhood you grow up in, where you go to school and where you work, factor heavily in the strength of your network. More specifically, those that grow up in a high-income neighborhood are 3 times more likely to have a strong network. Those that went to a top university are 2 times more likely to have a strong network. And those that work for a top company are 2 times then again likely to have a strong network. If you are fortunate enough to benefit from all 3 of these dynamics, you are 12 times more likely to have a strong network, the kind of network that creates the opportunities that I was just referring to. But what if you have the aptitude? What if you have the skills? What if you have the grit, the resilience, the growth mindset, the compassion? What if you're exactly the kind of person that our organizations are looking to hire? That kind of star talent. But you didn't grow up in a high-income neighborhood. You didn't go to a top school. And you haven't worked for a top company. That's the network gap. And there's a very virtuous cycle and vicious cycle that's associated with this gap. The virtuous cycle, when you have those relationships and you can tap those opportunities and you get your foot in the door, you then look out to your network and you create opportunities for them. And round it goes. But if you're not as fortunate to have those connections, and you don't gain access to those opportunities, and you're not working at those companies, it's difficult, if not impossible, to create opportunities for your connections. So the question is, how can we turn this around? How can we create opportunities for those that have all the right skill sets, who can create enormous amounts of value, but don't necessarily have the right relationships? And once they are inside our companies, once they're working for our companies and adding value and in positions of influence, they can in turn create opportunities for their connections. That's how we can turn a vicious cycle into a virtuous one. This is a tractable problem. This is a solvable problem. And at LinkedIn, we think the solution comes in at least 3 areas: product, programs, and people. With regard to product, for us, the way we've been thinking about it most recently is redefining what a connection means on LinkedIn to help close that network gap. And I want to talk a little bit more about this in the context of a personal experience. My wife and I are very involved with the Boys and Girls Club of the Peninsula. It is an amazing organization in Silicon Valley that seeks to ensure that local youth graduate high school with a clear plan of what's to come next. And every year they do a Youth of the Year award, and it's an incredible event. The finalists are just all to a person extraordinarily talented. And this year, had an opportunity to hear from one of the finalists, a young woman named Jayla, who at the time was a senior in high school. You could see her here. And listening to Jayla, I was just floored. She just completely owned the room, 400, 500 people in the audience. She had never done real public speaking before. And it was obvious that she's a superstar in the making. After the event was over, I approached her and I said, Jayla, that was incredible. You have a real gift. And she said, oh, thank you so much. I said, no, I don't mean it as a compliment. I mean it as a statement of fact. And we have to take care of that gift. So please know I'm available to you at any time. And if I can help with anything, let me know. And leave it to Jayla. She took me up on it. We did a one-on-one a few weeks later. Jayla is now a freshman at San Jose State. Her dream is to become a social justice reformer, a criminal justice defense attorney, and I have absolutely zero doubt she's going to make it happen. But one of the things that occurred to me throughout our interactions was, what would have happened had I not been at the event that night? What would have happened had I not approached her? We wouldn't have been able to make that connection. And if she was on LinkedIn and trying to find help in terms of advancing her dream, I wouldn't have been available to her. But we can change that. On LinkedIn, we have all the requisite tools. And so we are now hard at work to ensure that when an individual like Jayla is affiliated with an organization like the Boys and Girls Club, and when people like my wife and I are affiliated with that organization, if we raise our hands and express an interest in mentoring or advising or opening doors, that we can make that connection possible. And now imagine if it's not just the Boys and Girls Club that's able to play that role, but it's every nonprofit, every NGO, every junior college, not only in the United States, but around the world. We think this can be a game changer in terms of closing the network gap. So that would be one potential solution. Second potential solution set is in the programs that our companies collectively are innovating and investing in to hire people from non-traditional backgrounds. Last year we touched on a few apprenticeship programs at LinkedIn, in engineering, in sales, in recruiting, where we are creating opportunities. By way of example, in engineering, you don't necessarily need a 4-year degree in computer science. As long as you have some basic coding boot camp experience, you are welcome to join a 1 to 3 year apprenticeship program. And the results in that area and the other 2 that we've been doing have exceeded all of our expectations. And it's certainly not just us in this regard. We also touched last year on many of the innovative programs that your companies are starting to invest in and starting to lead the way on. And since that time, we've heard of even more areas where companies are really starting to change the game in terms of how they are tapping and hiring non-traditional talent. So some wonderful energy is going into trying to solve these issues. And hopefully that's going to continue, if not accelerate. The last area that we believe could be a potential solution is perhaps the most powerful. And it comes down to people, and more specifically individuals, and the fact that every single one of us is capable of making a difference in terms of closing the network gap. Those of us at LinkedIn were inspired by Meg Garlinghouse, our head of social impact, in this area specifically. Meg spends a lot of time thinking about how to bring our vision to life. And she's on the front lines in terms of how to try to reverse this network gap problem. And in preparation for a speech Meg gave last year on the subject of social impact and our vision statement, it occurred to her that every time she was doing an informational interview, it turned out to be someone from her network, someone that she was familiar with, and increasingly someone that looked like her and sounded like her. And she loves taking care of the people she's connected to, like many of us do. But it occurred to her that for every time she was creating an opportunity or spending time with someone from her network, she was potentially precluding someone from outside of her network, someone who could be equally, if not more, deserving. And so she kind of resolved to herself that rather than help yet another person from within her network, she was going to help someone from outside of her network first. And she got on stage at this event, and she shared that with everyone in the audience. And she said, "I'm seeking my plus one. And before I go back to helping my network, I'd like to help someone and be my plus one." And Brittany was in the audience that day, very enterprising. And after Meg completed her speech, Brittany approached her and said, "I'd like to be your first plus one." Didn't take long at all. And Meg talked to her a little bit, and it turns out Brittany's dream was to work in a foundation, a social impact foundation. Meg was able to make some connections, open some doors, and Brittany is now sitting in her dream job. Meg, yeah. This was eye-opening for Meg. Light bulb went off. And earlier this year, she does the first all-hands of the calendar year. Every year it's become a tradition at LinkedIn. She talks about social impact and our roadmap. She got up this year in January, and she shared this observation. She shared this story. And she encouraged every one of our employees to take what we would later coin the plus one pledge. To commit to help just one person from outside of your network. To accept the invitation, to respond to the email, to open a door, make an introduction, provide advice, mentorship. The response that we got from the employees was overwhelmingly positive. As a matter of fact, roughly 60% of our team got involved. It's over 9,000 people. And the impact they were able to have was truly inspiring. Rather than tell you in my own words, I thought you should hear it directly from the people that were impacted. So let's cue that video.
I posted on LinkedIn that I would love to connect with somebody to help them in their career, which is how I met Wally. Wally was born in Afghanistan, where he and his family fled to Pakistan for a refugee camp for 8 years.
When I saw Stephanie's post on LinkedIn, I contacted her, and she immediately opened up her whole network to me.
And that's where I came in as a point of contact within LinkedIn engineering. Through a series of conversations, I wanted to help Wally develop a framework.
Robert, of course, mentored me and helped me with technical job interviews, and they gave me the skills that I need to find a software engineering job after I graduate, so I can support not only myself, but also my family back in Afghanistan.
I saw Joanna's story in the local news. A single mom battling breast cancer who had been laid off from her job. I immediately felt a connection to her and was able to track her down and gift her LinkedIn Premium.
I'll be honest, when Brooke first reached out to me, I was skeptical. And then I met her for the first time, and she was such a breath of fresh air. Energetic, genuine, knowledgeable. She asked me, where did I want to work next? And I said, you know, really the gold standard is going to be Cerner. She posted my story on the LinkedIn feed. A college classmate of Brooks works for Cerner, contacted me, and I am now in conversations with them.
So, thank you. So, a quick update since that video was shot. Wally was able to land a job at eBay. So, yeah, it's wonderful. We are certainly not alone with regard to efforts like these. And while you may not call it the +1 pledge, many of you are doing similar things to extend opportunity beyond your networks. One wonderful example that recently came to our attention. LaShonda, are you out there? Oh, here's LaShonda. Hi, LaShonda. So LaShonda is an executive director at Comcast, and she was introduced to Jervon through a mutual relationship in their church organization. And Jervon, at the time that LaShonda met him, was a rising junior. He had a dream of working for a media company, but he was growing increasingly frustrated with the fact that he was getting a lot of no's when he was applying for these internships. And LaShonda, spending some time with him, was struck by his resilience, his grit, and the clarity of his vision in terms of what he wanted to accomplish. And when I heard that part of your story, it resonated deeply. Because when I meet people like that, those are the folks you want to extend the opportunities to. Those are the people that know what they want. You want to give them that chance. They have that light in their eyes, you know? And so she was able to make some introductions, make a few calls, and today Jervon is at one of his dream companies, Disney. So great work, LaShonda. So in light of these stories, in light of the clear impact and effectiveness of pledging to help just one person outside of your network, you can see the results. We thought it would be really cool to encourage all of you here at Talent Connect to take the +1 pledge, to open a door and hopefully create an opportunity, provide some advice, make an introduction for one person outside of your network. Now, I understand some of you may be thinking, there's 4,684 of us. You may not have known that exact number until you saw it behind me. Jeff, you're talking about this big vision, every member of the global workforce, how are we going to make a difference? You know, there's millions upon millions of people that are on the wrong end of that network gap. How could several thousand people make a difference? It turns out you may have a lot more influence and power than you realize. Many of you are on the front lines of recruiting talent into organizations that have 13.8 million employees. That's how many folks work at the companies that you bring talent into. Nearly 14 million people. If we're able to collectively inspire just 10% of the employees at your companies, and they extend an opportunity to just one person, we can potentially transform the career trajectory of 1.4 million individuals. That's not, yeah, thanks. That's not just moving the needle in terms of the network gap. That's creating a movement. And we can do that together. In success, collectively, we can start to make this belief a reality together. And in turn, we can help to accelerate our vision to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce together. One more thing. To help get things going and help accelerate this burgeoning movement, this +1 pledge, we would like to offer all of you 3 premium subscription gift cards, and for you to give that to one person outside of your network, open a door, create an opportunity, and then we'd love it if you could share your story using the hashtag +1pledge on LinkedIn or elsewhere. And hopefully we're going to see some of you on this stage next year to share your story. I see a bunch of phones going up. I think people are trying to document this just so they can get access to their cards and make sure that we're good to our word. But I'll make it even easier on you. Those gift cards are under your chairs. So thank you, everyone. Let's make this +1 pledge happen. Thank you.